Thank you for joining us again this week for PlanFirst Live. And this week we're going to be discussing smart floor plans and how to avoid wasted space. PlanFirst, as you may or may not know, is a company that specializes in architectural, interior and landscape design, as well as quantity surveying and engineering. So today's topic, as I said, was smart floor plans. And we're going to touch briefly on it because it's quite a broad topic. Feel free to add comments as we go. Now, the question is, what are smart floor plans? It's a balance between aesthetic and not wasting space. You know, you would go through a systematic process and just being mindful that every square meter does cost money and not wasting square meters on spaces that you don't generally use often. Look at how you live, not what you want. So be realistic about your lifestyle. So one would zone private spaces, public spaces and service spaces together. Be mindful of your circulation space. Utilize multifunctional rooms. One of the biggest culprits of wasted space is the formal dining room, for instance. Used very seldom, but utilizing a whole room. But traditionally, there were always long passages in the middle of homes, typically with bedrooms on one side, living spaces on the other, or bedrooms in the front and living spaces at the back. Group the rooms around a central hub. So each of the rooms can still have their own dedicated space and be a decent size, but you minimize having that corridor running through the whole length of the house, basically. Another one is oversized foyers. Now, although it does give quite an impressive entrance to the house, try and incorporate the foyers into usable space. You would make a statement out of that entrance so that it doesn't lose its importance. And now we're going to have a look at the formal dining room, which, as I said before, is one of the biggest culprits of wasted space. How you can avoid this is if one has a look at putting sliding screens, for instance, between an open plan living room, dining room. You're not using it, you open it, and you could effectively split that space into two. Another one is awkward corners and dead zones, typically underneath a staircase. You could put a workspace in, and that becomes totally functional space that actually almost gives you another room to work with. Clever lighting you can make quite a nice feature underneath the staircase. Bathrooms is another one. You can still do a very nice luxurious bathroom. Just make sure that you've got enough space between your sanitary ware and fittings and, nice comfortable space. So the takeaway tips really start with how you live, not necessarily what you think you need. And think to yourself, is it really necessary? Where does this passage or hallway go to? And is there another way of designing it to minimize the length or the width of it? Rather take the time to invest in smart design rather than investing in square meters. And then also have a look at the volume of the room. So it's not all about the floor area, but it is about the height and the volume, the light. Having big windows, of course, does make a room or a space look bigger.
I was just writing down a equation that I made up in terms of how I believe consumers look at floor areas of new houses in particular in the current day and age. And that is an equation where effectively it's not unusual for a customer to look at a square meter rate, and the lower they can get that rate and then multiply it by the floor area, the best result they will get. There's an incongruent relationship between good planning, as Sian has shown, and effectively grandeur. That we don't believe that extra or oversized rooms generally produce necessarily a better result. It's interesting how that's changed over time. We live in a 1930s house, and if I described it in terms of the rooms, and then I'll mention the square meterage of it, most people would be quite surprised how small it is. So we have a 5-bedroom, 2 living room, 2 bathroom, double garage home, and it is 170 square meters. By modern suburban developments, 170 square meter home, it wouldn't be unusual that at most that would probably be a single living 2-bedroom home. So it shows you how much things have changed. It's cozy, it's intimate. You can see there's even a musical instrument. There's some personal artifacts. It's a very personalized and meaningful space for the homeowner in terms of how they engage with their family and with their guests. So I think, just to conclude, as architects, when we design spaces, I think one of the biggest differentials, and this is one of the ways we actually bring huge value to projects, is if you're going to customize a house, effectively the price per square meter will be more expensive than if you're basically doing repetitive group home builds. But what we really bring to the table is actually that we very, very sensitively critique the required floor area for the customer. And in that example, that first example I showed with the new beach house, we reduced the floor area during the concept design, I think, by almost 60%.
And I think that there's a lot more emphasis nowadays on finding smart solutions, having furniture that can double up, that can pack away. You only utilize it when you actually need it. Is open plan layout always better?
No.
I would say no, it's not. I think I love open plan, but not everywhere.
Really important that people keep a broad mind and work with a designer who will actually create a dialogue on configurations of spaces, which is what are some creative ways to turn awkward corners into usable space. And what I just wanted to mention on that is I learned this from an architect here in Wellington, who was pretty much my main mentor in learning about domestic space after having been a commercial architect. And that was one of the partners at Craig Moller, that is a very historic housing architect in New Zealand. I remember when I drew a floor plan for a new house, and they looked at the plan and they said that the house is 200 millimeters too big. That, I thought they were just trying to, at that stage, to create work for me. They were right. That's the skill that a good architect will bring to space definition. We're adamant in the practice that you cannot design a house or the spaces inside that house without actually laying out the furniture.
If you're talking about renovations, it's very difficult to take an existing house which was compartmentalized, renovate it and make it completely open plan, because some of those structural elements will need to be retained. So those are very good opportunities to do that demarcation in the various zones in an open plan.
Yeah, open plan could definitely backfire. Things like any type of old office buildings that get converted into modern apartments.
I think as long as every design decision has got intent, and there's a reason why you're making that decision, and you're not just making it because you've got to do something. What is the best way to make a small entryway both functional and stylish?
Nice thing about small spaces is that they're more affordable to make much more luxurious. Like that beach house that I started with, because it was architect designed and we're conscientious about the size of the house, it means that the quality of the house.
I just would like to add that next week's topic, we're going to speak about, is it better to rebuild or to renovate? And lastly, if you guys want to get hold of us, you can reach us on our website, our 0800 number, Facebook page, or Instagram.